4.5 billion euros. That's how much one woman stole in 3 years, using technology that didn't exist. You think pyramid schemes are obsolete? Not at all. They haven't just evolved, they've become indestructible. My name is Mr. Darkweb, and today I'm going to tell you about an investigation that made me rethink everything I knew about financial scams. In the year 2023, in the news on CoinDesk, there was an interesting note. Bulgarian cryptocurrency queen remains on the run. It was about a certain Ruja Ignatova and the OneCoin project. The name didn't say anything, but the damage figure caught my eye. More than 4 billion euros. I started digging. The first thing I did was to the archives. The Wayback Machine showed that the OneCoin website looked like a typical cryptocurrency exchange. But the deeper I dug into the FBI court documents, the clearer it became. This cryptocurrency had never existed. Documents from the Southern District of New York were in the public domain. I read the indictment. The scheme ran from 2014 to 2017. Victims bought educational packages for which they received OneCoin tokens. Tokens that could not be exchanged, sold, or used anywhere else. Genius? Yes. But what struck me most was that it wasn't exceptional. I started looking for similar cases. Finico, 7 billion rubles in damages. S Group in Ukraine, tens of thousands of victims. Forsage, 300 million worldwide. And that's just what made the news. At 3 in the morning, flipping through SEC reports and reading Bitcoin Talk archives, I realized I wasn't just looking at a series of individual scams. It was an evolution. A new kind of financial predator that had learned to use technology in such a way that the victims themselves became its protectors. But how did we get to this point? How did a scheme that an Italian immigrant invented a century ago in Boston become a global digital threat? To understand this, I had to go back to the very beginnings of pyramid schemes. Charles Ponzi and his postal coupons. Because only after studying the whole chain of evolution, I was able to understand the main thing. What exactly made modern pyramids practically invulnerable? And who is behind the wave of new schemes that is hitting the world right now? As I said, in order to understand this, we need to go back to the beginning. We need to understand who the famous Charles Ponzi was, and more importantly, why he became a famous personality around the world. Boston, 1919. A small office on School Street, number 27. A sign on the door reads, Securities Exchange Company. Inside is an Italian immigrant named Charles Ponzi, and an idea that would change the world of financial fraud forever. While perusing the Boston Globe archives in the digital library, I came across an article from the 27th of July, 1920. The headline was, Ponzi promises $1,500 for every 1,000 in 90 days. The journalist wrote with undisguised skepticism. And he was right. Ponzi promised 50% profit in 45 days. He was allegedly making money from arbitrage of international postal coupons, buying them cheaply in Italy and selling them dearly in America. On paper, the scheme looked legitimate. In reality, postal coupons for such sums simply did not exist. But here's what stuck with me about the police reports. Ponzi was a marketing genius. He didn't just promise profits, he created a stir. He actually paid his first investors the interest he promised. They told their friends, friends told their friends, and so on down the chain. Within 7 months, queues lined up. People brought not only their savings, but also mortgaged their houses and sold their property. At its peak, Up to 1,000 people a day came to the Ponzi scheme. 30,000 investors. $40 million. More than $500 million in today's money. The scheme collapsed within a week. One journalist asked a simple question: how many postal coupons do you need to make such a profit? It turned out to be more than existed worldwide. When I read those archives, what struck me was not how Ponzi was deceptive. What struck me was how quickly his scheme spread. No internet, no social media, just word of mouth. And still, within a few months, all of Boston knew about him. Ponzi was essentially the first person in the world to create a pyramid scheme and to define the phrase at all. But the most interesting thing is that he laid down 3 principles that still work today. The first is the promise of super profits with a plausible explanation. The second is actual payouts to the first investors to build trust. The third is using greed and social pressure to grow exponentially. But why do these principles, invented a century ago, work even better today? Digging through the Ponzi case files in the U.S. National Office archives, I found something interesting. In a statement to the investigation, he said, "If I had a way to instantly contact millions of people around the world, I would be richer than any king." Ponzi dreamed of what modern fraudsters have had since birth: a global network capable of delivering a message to billions of people in seconds. But between the Ponzi scheme and the cryptocurrency, Rouge stood another important stage of evolution, a stage that showed how political chaos and economic crisis can turn primitive schemes into a national disaster. And it happened in the Russia of the 90s, where the name of Sergei Mavrodi became synonymous with the largest scale pyramid scheme in the history of mankind. Let's remember the history of Mavrodi and his world-famous company, We Can Do Much, abbreviated MEME. Moscow, February of the year 1994. All the TV channels are running an advert. Every MMM ticket will bring you $200 of income a month. The film shows an ordinary Russian family buying a car with money from MMM shares. Studying the Kommersant investigation materials of those years, I realized Sergei Mavrodi had turned a Ponzi scheme into a national disaster, and he did it using 3 factors that the Italian swindler did not have. The first is television. Unlike Ponzi, who had to rely on word of mouth, Mavrodi had the ability to reach millions of viewers instantly. MMM's commercials were aired 20 times a day on all the central channels. The advertising budget was $15 million in the first few months alone. The second is political chaos. The year 1993. The shooting of the White House in Moscow. Economic collapse. People lost faith in the state, in banks, in the ruble. Against this backdrop, MMM looked like a salvation. The state has cheated us. The banks are bankrupt, but Mavrodi is paying, was the reasoning of millions. The third is mass financial illiteracy. In the materials of sociological surveys of those years, I found a shocking statistic. 80% of Russians did not understand what shares were. 70% did not understand what dividends were. MM was not selling shares in the legal sense, but simple tickets with the promise of redemption at a rising price. The result exceeded all expectations. By the summer of 1994, 10 to 15 million people had invested in MMM. Imagine, every 10th resident of Russia. The amount of deposits, according to various estimates, from 40 to 80 trillion non-denominated rubles. But what struck me most of all in the archive materials was not the scale, but the psychology. When MMM stopped paying out money in July of the 94th, people did not demand a refund. They demanded the resumption of the pyramid scheme. In August, thousands of depositors came to the MMM office on Warszawskoye Szosy, with placards reading, "We believe Mavroди" and "Save MMM." Reading Izvestia reports of those days, I realized that Mavroди had achieved what PONZI had dreamed of. He had turned the victims into fanatically devoted allies. Moreover, in December 1995, Mavroди was elected to the State Duma on the anti-government wave. His slogan, "The state destroyed MMM, I will restore justice." Genius? Absolutely. But the most interesting thing started later. In 2011, when Mavroди launched MMM 2011, this time through the internet. And here there was a qualitative leap in the evolution of pyramids. Studying the case files in the archives of the Russian Ministry of Internal Affairs, I discovered the new MMM was operating in 30 countries at the same time, from India to Nigeria. The victims themselves transferred money to each other via web money and Bitcoin. There was no central account. The funds circulated directly between the participants. It was a revolution. Mavroди realized what other swindlers did not. You don't need to keep the money to yourself. It is enough to organize a system where victims will cheat each other themselves, and he will remain in the shadows as ideologist and coordinator. 300,000 victims all over the world, and not a single dollar in Mavrodi's own accounts. When I was analyzing this scheme, a puzzle came together for me. Mavrodi showed how to use 3 new tools: mass media for instant audience reach, political chaos to legitimize distrust of the system, internet to create a decentralized structure without a central point of failure. But even Mavrodi could not foresee what would happen next. He could not imagine how cryptocurrencies would transform his decentralized model into something fundamentally new. And this is where the most interesting part of the story begins. Because those who came after Mavrodi created the technology that makes modern pyramids virtually invulnerable. The 3rd of January in the year 2009, a document appeared on the web that turned the world of finance upside down. 9 pages of technical description titled, "Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic monetary system," written by the enigmatic Satoshi Nakamoto. Studying the first discussions of Bitcoin on the KP Forum, I realized the creators of cryptocurrencies wanted to build an honest financial system without intermediaries. They had no idea that they were giving fraudsters the most powerful weapon in history. Because cryptocurrencies have solved 3 major problems that PONZI and Mavrodi faced. Problem 1, footprints. When PONZI transferred money through banks, each transaction left a paper trail. Bank documents, checks, receipts, all of these eventually led the investigation to his accounts. Mavrodi was smarter. He used cash and barter, but this too had limitations. Cryptocurrencies have given pseudonymity. All transactions seem to be visible in the blockchain, but linking a wallet to a real person is a separate task. And if you use mixers like Tornado Cash or Blender.io, tracking becomes a hell of a task. Reading Chainalysis, reports on the flows of dirty cryptocurrencies, I found out. In the year 2022, more than $20 billion passed through the mixers. Of that, less than 10% could be traced. Problem 2 is boundaries. PONZI had a problem. He could only work in Boston, at most in the USA. Mavrodi's was only in the former Soviet Union. Expansion required opening offices, hiring people, obtaining licenses. Cryptocurrencies have removed geographical restrictions. With one click, you can send $1 million from London to Tokyo bypassing all banks and regulators. No visas, no licenses, no currency laws. Moreover, the victims themselves come to the scammers. All you have to do is create a website, place adverts in social networks in 30 languages, and you will attract investors from all over the world. The third problem is trust. The most difficult task of any pyramid scheme is convincing people to give money to a stranger. PONZI solved this through personal charm and recommendations. Mavrodi did it through television adverts and pseudo-scientific explanations. But cryptojackers have found a better way. Technological fetishism. Blockchain, smart contracts, DeFi, NFT. These words sound so scientific and complex that most people automatically trust them. If it's blockchain-based, then it's trustworthy, victims thought. Most importantly, cryptocurrencies have created the illusion of complete transparency. All transactions are visible in the blockchain. It is impossible to cheat. In fact, only the movements between wallets are visible. What is behind each address is a mystery behind 7 seals. Studying the technical documentation of the Forsage project in the GitHub archives, I realized modern crypto pyramids use smart contracts not for honesty, but for camouflage. The code looks complex and scientific, but in fact it fulfills the simplest function, redistributing money from late participants to early ones. But most ingeniously, they turn victims into evangelists. In a regular pyramid scheme, people are motivated by money. In a crypto pyramid, they are also motivated by ideology. We are building the finances of the future. We are fighting the banking system. This is a revolution. Victims feel that they are not suckers, but pioneers of a new era. The result exceeded all expectations. By the year 2023, the share of cryptocurrencies in financial pyramids had reached 48%. In Russia, more than 80%. But as I dug through the court documents of OneCoin, Finico, and dozens of other projects, a strange feeling started to hit me. Too many coincidences, too similar schemes, too many synchronized launches. And then I wondered, what if it's not just evolution? What if there is something more behind the wave of crypto pyramids than just technological progress? The answer to that question led me to discoveries that made me rethink everything I knew about modern financial fraud. To understand how perfect modern pyramid schemes have become, let's look at 3 cases. 3 schemes that showed cryptocurrencies have turned financial fraud into an exact science. Case 1. OneCoin, the cryptocurrency that didn't exist. The year 2014, Bulgaria. Ruja Ignatova, an Oxford law doctor and former McKinsey consultant, is launching a revolutionary cryptocurrency. The website looks professional. The white paper is full of technical terms. The promises are modest, not thousands of % profit, but stable growth like Bitcoin. As I studied the FBI materials, I realized OneCoin was brilliant precisely because of its simplicity. No blockchain, no miners, just a database on a server in Sofia, where numbers changed at the click of a mouse. But the victims didn't know that. They bought cryptocurrency education packages for euros and received OneCoin tokens. The tokens could not be withdrawn, exchanged, or used. But it was possible to farm new ones by inviting friends. 4.5 billion euros in 3 years. 3 million victims worldwide. Rouget disappeared in 2017 and is still wanted by the FBI. Case 2. Finico, a pyramid scheme with artificial intelligence. The 2019 year. Tatarstan. Kirill Doronin, a 25-year-old programmer, creates the Finico investment platform. Legend, The neural network trades on crypto exchanges and brings up to 30% a month. Reading the investigation materials in the archives of the Russian Prosecutor General's office, I discovered there was no neural network. The money was simply redistributed among the participants in a classic Ponzi scheme. But the packaging was perfect. Website with real-time profit charts. A mobile application with push notifications about AI trades. Telegram channels with insights from traders. Victims felt part of an elite club of technology investors. 7 billion rubles of damage. 70,000 victims. Doronin has been arrested, but most of the money has not been found. It has gone through crypto exchanges to dozens of countries. Case 3. S Group is a Ukrainian crypto bank. 2022 year. Ukraine. Against the backdrop of war and economic instability, S Group, the first Ukrainian crypto bank, appears. Promises from 7 to 12% per month on investments in its own cryptocurrency. Analyzing the archives of Ukrainian media, I found details of the scheme. Clients bought fictitious S-coin tokens that were not listed on any exchange. All trading was done through the company's internal platform. The exchange rate was growing every day, thanks to successful investments. In reality, S-coin existed only in the S Group database, but the victims saw their investments grow, received interest, and brought friends. The referral program gave bonuses for each new client. Tens of thousands of victims. Payments stopped at the beginning of the year 2024. The founders disappeared with the money. 3 different countries, 3 different periods, 3 different legends. But when I compared the patterns of work, I was struck by the amount of overlap. All used fictitious cryptocurrencies or tokens. All had internal platforms with no access to external exchanges. All were actively promoted through social media and bloggers. Everyone promised revolutionary technologies, blockchain, AI, quantum algorithms. All had aggressive referral programs. All disappeared almost simultaneously at the first sign of trouble. But the most interesting thing is the technical side. Studying the code of the sites through the GitHub and Wayback Machine archives, I discovered many used identical templates, similar algorithms, identical modules for user management. It's like someone created a crypto pyramid constructor and handed it out to scammers around the world. Moreover, when I analyzed the launch dates of dozens of projects, I noticed a pattern. New schemes appeared in waves. The first wave was from 2014 to 2016. The second from 2019 to 2021. The third wave is starting right now. An accident? I don't think so. Because when I started digging deeper, looking for connections between the organizers, analyzing cryptocurrency flows, studying domain registration data, a picture began to emerge in front of me that explained everything. Modern pyramid schemes haven't just evolved. They've become part of something bigger, a system, an industry, maybe even a network that spans the globe. And this discovery led me to realize what makes them truly invulnerable. So I had all the pieces of the puzzle in front of me. From Ponzi postal coupons to Ruji Ignatova's fictitious tokens. 100 years of financial fraud evolution. And I finally realized what it was that made modern pyramids virtually invulnerable. The secret turned out to be not one technology, but a combination of them. The first level of protection is technological pseudonymity. Cryptocurrencies have given fraudsters what Ponzi schemers dreamed of: the ability to transfer millions while remaining in the shadows. When I traced the paths of money movement through blockchain analyzers, the picture became clear. Funds pass through dozens of wallets, mixers, and decentralized exchanges. By the time they are transferred to fiat, it is almost impossible to link the transaction to a specific person. The second level is geographic blurring. Classic pyramids have always had a center. The PONZI office in Boston, the MMM headquarters in Moscow. Modern schemes have no physical location. Servers are in one country, domains are registered in another. Founders live in a third. Victims live all over the world. When OneCoin started being investigated in Bulgaria, operations moved to Dubai. When trouble started in the UAE, it moved to Singapore. Rouge could run a $4 billion empire from a laptop from anywhere on the planet. The third level is psychological camouflage. The most ingenious invention is turning victims into evangelists. Modern pyramids sell not just profit, but ideology. Revolution in finance, fight against the banking system, technologies of the future. Finico's victims were not just investing money, they believed they were building a new world. When the scheme collapsed, many continued to defend the project on social networks, blaming envious people and the system for the collapse. The fourth level is technical complexity. Blockchain, smart contracts, DeFi protocols. These terms sound so scientific that most people automatically trust them. Victims think, if the code is open and on GitHub, then everything is fair. In reality, the code can be perfectly legal and still function as a classic pyramid scheme. The fifth level is a decentralized structure. Modern schemes do not keep the money in one place. Funds circulate between participants directly through smart contracts. When authorities try to find the main account, it simply does not exist. There are thousands of small wallets linked by an algorithm. It was this combination that made crypto pyramids invulnerable. They solved all the problems that Ponzi and Mavrodi faced. There it is, the formula for the perfect 21st century pyramid. When I realized this, I felt a strange satisfaction. The mystery had been solved. The evolution from primitive Ponzi schemes to high-tech crypto machines of deception is logical and predictable. Each new tool, television, the internet, cryptocurrencies, made the pyramids more sophisticated. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the data screens. Hundreds of schemes, billions of stolen dollars, millions of victims. A sad but understandable picture of technological progress in the hands of fraudsters. It seemed that the investigation was completed. The mystery of invulnerability of modern pyramids was solved. But I didn't know then that I was only seeing the tip of the iceberg. When I was about to close my browser, my eyes caught on one detail in the hoist data that I had missed before. For those who are not in the know, Whois is like a passport of any website. It shows who registered it, what email was used, when it was created. This data is open to everyone. Finico's domain was registered through Namecheap. That's the usual case. But a familiar email flashed in the administrative contact field. I saw the same address in the registration details of S Group, and OneCoin, and 7 other projects on my list. I started cross-checking dozens of domains through Whois archives, and gradually an incredible picture emerged. Someone coordinated the launch of schemes around the world. Someone provided the fraudsters not only with technology, but also with infrastructure. And that's when I realized my investigation wasn't over. I spent 3 days digging through the Whois archives, collating data, and the picture that emerged shocked me. It wasn't just Finico, OneCoin, and S Group that were linked by the same email address. In front of me was a network of 47 projects around the world, from Europe to Asia, from Latin America to Africa. But that was just the beginning. Having analyzed hosting providers' data through public databases, I found that most of these sites use servers from just a few companies, and all of these companies were linked to a single parent structure, a holding company in Singapore. What follows is more. Studying the GitHub archives, where many projects had placed their code, I found repositories with identical modules, user registration systems, algorithms for calculating interest, interfaces for offices. Everything was created in the same style and came out of the same hands. It was as if there was a pyramid scheme assembly line, and that's when I started looking for people. The first clue was that the OneCoin domain was registered to a shell company in Belize. Through corporate registration databases, I found the director, a certain Mikhail K. The same person was listed as a director in 8 other companies related to crypto projects. The second clue is that the Finico case file mentioned an IT security consultant, Andre V. After searching through LinkedIn and public databases, I discovered that he worked as a technical director at a company that developed platforms for innovative financial projects. The third clue is the most important. In the court documents on the S Group case, there was an independent auditor called Dmitry R. This person was checking the reliability of the investment scheme. But when I ran his biography, it turned out that he was the same auditor who had confirmed the financial stability of OneCoin and 12 other projects. Digging even deeper through public company registers and court databases, I found what I was looking for. All these people had one structure in common: an international consulting group with its head office in Dubai and branches in Singapore, Cyprus, and Panama. Officially, they were engaged in technology consulting for fintech startups. Unofficially, they created ready-made pyramid schemes to order. Their services included technical platform, working, a ready-made website with a registration system, user accounts, simulated trading. Legal packaging, registration of companies in offshore jurisdictions, preparation of documents, obtaining licenses in friendly jurisdictions, marketing support, creating a project legend, producing promotional materials, liaising with bloggers and influencers, technical security, setting up servers, protection from hackers, money laundering systems through cryptocurrency mixers, post-production, helping the project close down and the founders disappear at the first sign of trouble. Full service, fraud franchise. Studying their price list in the archives of the Darknet, I discovered the cost of the basic package ranged from $50,000 to $100,000. For this money, the client received a ready-made pyramid scheme capable of raising millions. Profitability is thousands of %. But the most shocking discovery was at the end. As I analyzed the financial flows through blockchain analyzers, I realized that this group was not just selling services. They were getting a percentage of every amount stolen. Ruja Ignatova, Kirill Doronin, the creators of S Group, all of them were not independent fraudsters, but franchisees, executors in a global system. The real masters remained in the shadows, getting their share of billions of stolen money and preparing new schemes. And then I realized the main thing. Modern financial pyramids have become invulnerable not only thanks to technology. They became invulnerable thanks to industrialization. Fraud has become a business, a corporation, a freed machine. While the authorities are catching individual fraudsters, the real puppeteers are already preparing the next wave. And judging by the activity on the Darknet that I've been tracking in recent weeks, this wave will be the most destructive in history. This time, the scammers plan to use artificial intelligence. New schemes will analyze your social media profiles, determine your psychological type, and create personalized deception. For technology lovers, revolutionary blockchain. For conservatives, stable investments. For young people, crypto games with earnings. Deepfake technology will create an army of fake, successful investors who will tout profits in video testimonials. It will become impossible to discern the fake. It's no longer just a scam. It is an industry with a turnover of tens of billions of dollars, using the most advanced technologies on the planet. How to protect yourself. Never invest in projects that promise more than 10 to 15% per annum. Check licenses through the official registers of regulators. If you're being actively persuaded, that's a red flag. So now to summarize my investigation. In 100 years, pyramids have evolved from primitive PONZI schemes to global corporations of deception. Technology has made them increasingly sophisticated and invulnerable. But we have one advantage: knowledge. Now you know how they work. Share this information. Warn your loved ones, because you could be the next victim. As always, you're Mr. Dark Web.